Awesome. How are you today?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Fantastic. Thanks.
Yeah, good.
I'll start a little bit by explaining to people what I'm doing. I do this a little bit on the beginning of my videos. So, about a month ago, almost now, I decided to do these live videos, mainly with the local businesses here in Southwest Florida, where I live, to help local businesses, to kind of with the situation with the COVID-19, the economy is kind of bad, and businesses were losing money. So I said, I have a pretty big following on Instagram. I have over 80,000 people there, and I said, a way that I could kind of give back to my community is do these live videos with local business owners here, and have them showcase their businesses, their services, their products, and hopefully, if I can get one customer at their door, it will help the economy back up.
Big
Well,
win.
it turns out that I have actually a pretty big following of football lovers, and that's not by coincidence, because I'm very involved with football, both here in the U.S. and in Brazil. And I've done a couple of lives with Coach P.J. Gibbs here from Naples, with Leon Sarsi, former
Yeah,
University of Miami player,
good
and
one.
those were well received, right? So I wanted to kind of get back to my followers, and talk a little bit about football too. So I have, today, tomorrow, and Saturday are football themed lives, and I thought today would be a good one to kind of get back and talk to someone from USA Football like yourself.
Yeah.
Um, so I wanted to start by asking you to kind of, introducing yourself a little bit, who you are, where you're from,
hmm
what you have done so far before we get into the football talk.
Sure. Overall, my name's Aaron Ingram. I oversee the national team program for USA Football. I'm pretty lucky. I've coached for 24 years before I did this. I actually started out as a coach in our program when it was very early, young, and just very small at the time, and kind of was mesmerized. I had a great experience at the program. Kind of worked my way up from doing some camps and so forth for us, and then I was the head coach for our U18 national team. They competed and had some fun doing that, and then was approached by our former director at the time to, hey, you want to step off the field maybe and come and take over our program. At the time, I was at University of Nevada and was coaching and getting ready to start my second year there. Was working for Brian Polian, who is the recruiting coordinator and special teams coordinator at Notre Dame, and was a big influence on me and some things. And so I sat down with him, and he told me that, opportunities like this don't always come along. And so I packed up the car and drove out about a week later, cross country from Nevada to Indiana, and saw America on my way. And my wife joined me 6 months later.
Awesome, awesome. So if you could tell, the viewers a little bit of what is exactly your role, because you have a pretty big title, but what your role encompasses, and I think some people think of you as the head coach of the national team, and I
Yeah.
think you have a role that it's much bigger than that. So if you can kind of elaborate on
If you ask some of my staff, they'll tell you that I'm always coaching.
that.
They'll give you a bad time. I always got my hand in a lot of things, and we wear a lot of different hats. We're one big team at USA Football. If somebody from any other department usually needs help, we come running. We're real big on that and big on our team. But what I do is I oversee all of our athlete selection camps, and we call them regionals. Last year we had 18 of them nationwide. And then same with coaches. We do the same thing with evaluate coaches and athletes there. And that'll move on into our summer program usually, where we have middle school bowl games. We'll have kids that aren't in high school yet. I don't think they're ready for international competition. International football is getting very, very competitive, as you know. And then we'll do our second step for high school, and it's a shells camp. It's not full contact, but it'll get pop in the pads a little bit and some bigger development. And then from there, we usually move on into January to the International Bowl to compete. We competed against Canada, Mexico, Japan, Australia from back in the years, Samoa back in the years. Brought in all kinds of people. Panama has had a really good success the last couple of years and done some good stuff as well.
Awesome. And you kind of touch upon, so I'm already going to dive right into that question. So I'm sure but I'm related to the Brazilian Federation of American Football.
Mm-hmm.
I'm their international relations director. And my goal is to help grow football down in Brazil. And I wanted to, you've been involved a little bit with the international football, or at least you've seen it, and I
Yeah.
wanted to kind of get your take on that. What do you see from perhaps 10 years ago what it was and to what it is today, and how it's kind of evolving, and where do you see it going forward as well?
It is evolving. It is evolving very big and very faster than a lot of people know. People say that, oh, football is, getting smaller and it's not growing, and that's not true. If you step out of the United States, it's growing, and people are putting a lot of resources into it. In 2016, in the World Championships, we're in Harbin, China, and at the time, you only had really two powers in the game, which was the United States and Canada. Canada came in as we came in as a defending champ, actually, and we ended up losing it. Got second. Canada's done an outstanding job. We had the chance to help mentor China, some teams from Austria who's outstanding. You see, like you said, football in Brazil is growing as well. There's a lot of them. A lot of people don't know that there's 71 countries that play American football,
Yeah.
And it's growing. You know what I mean? I get interest in emails and so forth from people all the time that are, hey, we're just starting. Where do you see it going? What's the first steps? And what should we do to play international? And what I tell everybody is don't jump into international play yet. It's a very different game internationally. Not so much different from what football is, but it's a big thing, and it's a big deal to a lot of people. I tell all of our players a lot of times, hey, look, you dream about going to college and playing. A lot of these other countries dream about coming here and playing and beating you. So you need to understand the pressure that comes with that, and the sacrifice and the responsibility.
Yeah. And I wanted to ask, and I don't know if you had the opportunity to observe this or not. So when I talked to Coach PJ Gibbs, he mentioned his experience coaching the Japanese under 18 team. And we talked a little bit about the differences between, coaching a U.S.-based team versus an international team.
Yeah.
And a lot of it it came down from fundamentals, right? Some of the players internationally are not starting to play the game until they're a little bit older. They're not going through, Pop Warner, going through all the different stages that you go through football in the U.S. So there's a bigger learning curve for them. Do you see that's kind of changing as well? That the ones that are playing now are a little bit more prepared because the game now has been played for a little bit longer in other countries as well?
By far, you know what I mean? I look back at some of the teams that we saw in 2016 in Harbin, and then in 2018 in Mexico City. They're just two different years for World Championships, and you saw programs that were, not really ready to outstanding college-based level Division I players. And, like Japan's a great example. Every year when they come play, that's part of it, is they want us to help them find some coaches. And a couple years, we've had a college staff that would come and coach them for the week. And then this year it just didn't work out. And so I was kind of searching through my database and some of the guys that I know that, who's outstanding teachers, because that's the best thing. We're trying to share the game. If we could just teach it the right way the first time, it'll help them grow and they'll accelerate. And PJ came to my mind right away. And so I reached out to PJ, and he was more than happy to do. He was actually flattered. And I think it was a pretty good experience for him. He had a good job. They ended up winning. Japan's outstanding. I tell people, you don't want to play Japan. Like, if I have my choice, I don't want to.
Yeah, no, he was definitely glowing when he was talking about winning and coaching the Japanese team and winning too. So he certainly enjoyed that as well. Now, kind of switching back a little bit to the U.S. Wanted to ask you in regards to you kind of alluded to a little bit where you're saying the sport is kind of diminishing here in the U.S. Let's put it that way. Do you feel that that's really true? I mean, do you think that less people are playing football now? Do you think there's concerns in regards to injuries and concussions? Because obviously there's always conversations about that. I haven't seen any data that backs up the conversations, and I kind of wanted to get your feeling for that as well.
I have real strong feelings on it. By far, I'm the mouthpiece for us in a lot of ways, and I wave the flag for our program in front of it for a lot of people. But you do, I think it's more of a media fight, because the game's never been safer than it is now. 50 years ago, when guys were barely wearing face masks and playing, and I don't think we've had such a problem then. But all of a sudden now, sure, players are bigger and stronger and faster, and science has helped with some of that, and training and all that. But you see some teams that are going down to 8-man in certain areas for demographics, because I think what it is kids nowadays have so many choices. There's the emergence of lacrosse, which is big, and all this others. They have so many other choices that we didn't have growing up. When you and I were growing up trying to play, we didn't have all these choices.
Yeah.
We played football, then basketball, and baseball, and maybe track, and that's about it. And that's what we did. We probably did all 3 or 4.
Yeah. No, for sure. And I wanted to ask you about one of the things that it was pretty cool. It was the International Bowl at AT&T Stadium that it was played this year. I wanted to see if you could kind of talk a little bit about what that was, and who participated, what was the outcome, and what was the experience like.
Every year, that's our goal, is to make it bigger and better. It's a great celebration of football. You know what I mean? It's the world's largest football competition. It's starting to become bigger than the World Championships at times because of the countries that are included. And every year I have to tell people no, because so many of them want to come and play U.S. teams. I can't always get that many U.S. teams to build. I have last year that came through our program, we had a little bit over 5,500 kids come through the program, which is a great number to evaluate and do. But once you get down to it, are they ready for international play? And I usually build 2 teams per age group based on international need to play. But playing at AT&T is the culmination of it in January. I don't care if you're a Cowboy fan or not. Anytime you walk out into that turf for the first time, it was pretty special. To get ready for it this year, to tell you the truth, I did something different. Every year, college in opening week, it was week 0. Auburn played Oregon at AT&T this year. And usually we're busy at the time, and we're planning, and there's so much going on. And I took a couple days. My wife and I went down to AT&T and met with the city of Arlington and talked to those guys. But then we went and took in the game, and it took the experience for me to another level. It really did, to really appreciate the stadium and so forth like that. But then getting back to it, like I said, when you come into the stadium and, you're wearing your country's uniform and your country's colors and letters, you hear your anthem going in, and, it's special. You see kids' lives changed, and, you see them tear up and they cry. And some of the things that they get just in the national anthem starting, it's a powerful moment,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and even if you don't end up, making it big with football, I mean, I'm sure that's a memory that you take with you for the rest of your life, right? Like walking into that stadium and representing your country. It's something
by far
very unique. So I wanted to take it back a little bit about your coaching experience. So you mentioned 24 years of coaching.
Yeah.
If you kind of walk us through, you mentioned a little bit of in Nevada, but where else did you coach? What did you coach? Who did you coach? A little bit more about your coaching career, if you will.
Sure. I started out as my grandfather was a coach. So I was born into the sport. My parents got divorced real early in high school, and then I lived with my grandfather in a book room, in a sense. It was a small room that he kept at a library with all his books, and there was a twin bed in there. And so I'd start reading. I'd get bored at night as a kid. I didn't have a TV or anything, and just kind of started reading books, old Grant Taft books, old Bill Walsh books, old stuff like that. So I grew up in the sport. But I didn't want to coach early on. It was something that I tried to stay away from as much as I could. I saw what it did to my grandmother, who my grandfather was never home. I saw what it did to my mom. My dad was never home with it when he started coaching and so forth too. So I stayed away as much as I could, and then I went to college and I played Division II football at Cal State Hayward at the time. And then when they dropped the program, I went to work full time. I was kind of, okay, what do I do? And I went to work in technology, and had a suit and tie job for a while, and worked in computers and so forth. And then I started setting up all my appointments to visit people in the afternoon. But then on the way there, I'd call and cancel, say, hey, I'm running a little late. Do you mind? And I'd meet you in the morning. And they'd say, oh, no problem. And then what I would do is I would go visit different high schools or colleges in Northern California every day to watch football, watch practice. And I showed up at a field one day, and my boss was right behind me in the car and caught me. And she kind of told me, hey, why don't you just go coach? And she was right, and I ended up going and coaching. But then I worked in high school. I coached at my alma mater for some years. And then I was lucky enough, I got a phone call from Fred Bolitnikoff Jr., at the time who was the offensive coordinator at the local junior college in Northern California, Chabot College. They had an opening for a wide receiver coach, and I went and interviewed and got the job. Before the season started, our head coach took a job down in Fresno and went to Fresno City College, and he asked me if I wanted to go. And I'd never been to Fresno, and I thought it'd be kind of a fun trip, you know. And I went home and I said, "Hey, can I go ask my grandparents, you know, before I say yes?" And he said, "Sure," you know. And I went down and asked him, and you know, I made that commute for about 3 months. It was about 3 hours each way, so it was a tough commute, but I was young and I was just excited to coach, and it was really fun. We had a really, really great run there. I coached there for 3 years. We were 29-1 and broke a lot of national records and had the all-time junior college rusher. And Maurice Morris at the time ended up playing for the Lions for a lot of years. Was at Oregon with Joey Harrington in that backfield. Came home. My grandfather was sick. Came home and got back to junior college and became the offensive coordinator at San Jose City College. We weren't a great program at the time, but had some really good success with recruiting. We were starting to pull some kids that normally wouldn't go there. And the powerhouse in the Bay Area at the time was a school called Foothill Junior College. It's in the hills right near Stanford and Menlo Park area, and it's real beautiful. And the head coach there, Marshall Spurbeck, called and had a job open, asked if I'd coach running backs, and I went and interviewed, and I got hired. By the time I walked down the steps from the office to the parking lot, he called me back and offered me the job. I coached at Foothill for, gosh, how long? 6 years at Foothill. And then he got the job at Sacramento State out in California, Division I job. And I came with him, you know, and at the time I probably wasn't ready. You know, there's lots of things. And once you go from a place with junior college where, you know, sometimes it's purgatory. It's not quite heaven, but it's not quite hell either. But it's still really good football, to Division I, where it's a job, it's a business, it's structured a lot more. There's a lot more rules. And all of a sudden you got the NCAA, you have all these other things. And was lucky enough to go there. And, you know, I cut my teeth there on my career a lot of ways. You know, I met some outstanding friends. You know, some of the guys that I was really lucky that I coached with are having some really, really good success. You know, Daniel DePrados, the special teams coordinator of South Florida. He was, you know, in my wedding, and I got to coach with him. And Andy Avalos, who's the defensive coordinator at Oregon, and Bush Hamden's the quarterback coach at Missouri now. And there's Clayton Adams, who was the assistant coach here in the Indianapolis Colts. There's some guys that were on our staff that were just phenomenal coaches at the time. Like anything else, you know, you don't win enough or things go wrong. We were fired, you know, and then I didn't know what to do. I always thought we would be in Sacramento for 20 years. My wife thought we were crazy, but I thought that's what would happen. And I didn't know what to do, and kind of reached out to some friends and tried to get some ideas. I was ready to take the year off and just kind of visit and research and kind of get some philosophy stuff done. And then Nick Rolovich, who's now the head coach at Washington State, reached out to me. He was the offensive coordinator at Nevada, and asked if I'd be interested to come up and be an analyst, and kind of go up and met Coach Polian, and went up twice to meet him, and then got a call from Coach Polian on a Friday and said, "Hey, can you be here Sunday morning at 9 a.m.? You know, that's our first staff meeting for the year, and I'd like you to be here then." So I sure enough, I packed the car up and moved to Nevada.
Very cool. That's well, you know, just from the story you tell me there, I heard wide receivers coach, running back coach, analyst. So you name it, you've done a little bit of everything.
I have. I was raised by an offensive line guy. I've never coached it, but then as the analyst, I worked with the quarterback. So pretty much, I'm an offensive guy by far, you know. And all my friends know it pretty quick. They'll tell you I'm an offensive guy.
Awesome. I wanted to ask you, you know, so I personally, obviously I'm from Brazil, but then I grew up in the Boston area, and I really didn't understand, you know, high school football, college football until I moved down to Florida about 4 years ago, and I went to a high school game here. It's something I talked to BJ here too, just because obviously I played while I was in high school in Boston. You know, I went to a couple of Boston College games, but it was not until, you know, I went to a local high school game here in Naples, or I went to the University of Miami game, that I really understood the difference in the culture and the difference, what it is. Um, not taken away from high schools or colleges in Massachusetts, but I learned pretty quickly that Florida, in other states, probably California and Texas, I would say, they just kind of live and breathe football much more
All there is.
than the others. And I
Oh
wanted
yeah.
to ask your opinion on that, and see, you see a lot of players, you see people from different parts of the U.S. And what is your take on that? Is that one of my impressions, or is that true? Is that
You
something?
know, it is true. It's true and it's not true. Where what it is that you do have those states that football's a religion. Nothing else matters. And that's it. High school football is it. And those states you mentioned, California, Florida, Texas, I would include Georgia, I'd include Ohio and Pennsylvania, and those probably too. But then you can go into Oklahoma and do a small Class A school, and where that whole town shuts down on Friday.